Welcome to Range World, the podcast where life, development, leadership, growth, intentionality, and experience come into balance right before your very ears. And now, here's your tour guide into Range World, the president of Get Life in Balance, Rain Kansman.
All right, welcome back to Rain's World, and I have with me Mr. Brian Sexton, the intentional encourager. And today, we're going to talk about a different topic. It will still include encouragement. I know that. He's a seasoned veteran sales and sales management, territory building, and customer engagement specialist with over 25 years across 4 different industries. In his career, Brian has won numerous and been nominated for sales awards for overall territory growth, gross sales, gross profit achievement, largest customer gained, and has set sales records in his previous companies still unmatched. I love that. It's like that high school thing, you know, right? Oh, my record's still up there. Brian's built and managed his sales territories from 2 to 25 million in annual revenue and is recognized as a people-first leader. In his spare time, Brian's the husband of 24 years to his wife, Tanya, and is the father of his son, Bryce, a sophomore at Marshall University. Brian is a minister, singer, musician, guest host, and broadcaster for the iHeartMedia in Huntington, West Virginia, as well as the voice of the Calvary Baptist Academy Patriots. In addition, Brian's the host of the Intentional Encourager podcast.
The Intentional Encourager podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Every Tuesday and Friday still released?
Yeah, Wednesday, Friday, Rain. And I'll tell you,
Friday.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, what an honor it is to be back in Rain's World. Every time I'm in Rain's World, it's like going into a Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's. I relax when I go into those places because they're just so inviting. And every trip into Rain's World is that same way, my friend. I am grateful for you. Listen, you were mentioning about managing the territories and things like that. You were directly in a part of that when I was a district sales manager for the company that we both worked for. I managed about a $25 million territory and 14 salespeople. And I'll tell you something, I looked forward to those times where we could plug into your knowledge and your expertise on a wide variety of topics because I knew you had been there. You'd been there, done that, and gotten the T-shirt. Yeah. I always loved tapping into that expertise. And I just think that's just going to be what we do today is just tap into that expertise.
Absolutely. So thank you. And yeah, let's start out with our first question, and that is.
And by the way, I'm a tea aficionado, so I've got a nice cup of Earl Grey here, so you may see me sip on that from time to time.
And just because he's from West Virginia doesn't mean it's hooch.
It is hooch, and I'll tell you this: it's my own special brand of hooch. So it is Earl Grey, a little bit of Folgers instant coffee, a little bit of organic honey.
Oh my!
And a little stevia and monk fruit blend sweetener.
Wow!
Yeah.
Dang, that's complex.
Listen? Let me ask you this: as a chef, did you ever marinate or brine things in tea? Did you use some tea in recipes?
Bit. Yep.
Yeah. I figured you had because you're pretty well versed in beverages like that too, selling coffee over the years, and of course as an executive chef, I know you paired pastries and things like that with different teas as you were putting, maybe a continental breakfast out or doing that kind of service like that. So I knew when I was talking tea, I was going right into your wheelhouse.
Absolutely. Very good. I'm feeling bad. All I got is water.
Well, I have that too because the tea's going to run out at some point, and I want to keep the voice nice and lubricated. So.
I like that. And, among the topics we're going to talk about today, one is talent. And you and I started this discussion a couple weeks back.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. So why is talent such a valuable commodity today?
Well, Rain, talent is, and I look at talent this way. I look at it in this marketplace and in this time that we're in. Talent has never been more valued monetarily or from a recruitment standpoint than it's ever been. I had a former DSM in the food business, a friend of mine, a guy that I replaced as a district sales manager. He told me something one time that I've never forgotten. He called me by my nickname. He called me Sexy. He said, Sexy, if you want good talent, don't put an ad in the newspaper. Go recruit them. See, years ago, if we wanted good talent, we put an ad in the paper and we put them through their paces and we collected resumes and we did all this other stuff to find what we thought was, quote, in air quotes, great talent. Well, now what we're finding out, Rain, is if you want good talent, you're probably going to look at your competitors. You're going to find those superstars inside your competitors. But here's why people are making, you see a lot about the Great Resignation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are leaving their companies. Yes, primarily for income and compensation increases. But I believe a lot more people are leaving because they're not encouraged by their leadership. They're not coached. We would rather coach than encourage.
Yeah. Yep.
And so again, that goes right to my wheelhouse of, and forgive me for the long-winded answer, but it goes right to the wheelhouse that I've been in, that we've got to encourage talent to stay instead of encourage them to walk out the door. Yeah. And we do, we're encouraging them to walk out the door because we're all the time coaching, we're all the time telling, we're all the time this and all the time that. We're not encouraging them to operate in their gifts. We're not encouraging them and saying, this is what I value about you and this is why. We've got to start creating cultures of encouragement in our company so that we keep the great talent where it is inside our company. Because as you know, Rain, the talent and acquisition costs in companies are staggering to replace people.
Yeah.
And so, I believe we've got to start encouraging talent to stay and showing them why they're valued.
Yeah. And that's not, there are facts and figures out there that back up what you're saying. So, exit interviews saying the number one reason that people leave is their direct uplink. Their supervisors, the reason most people leave. And I do agree with you. I think I watched a situation where I'm in the office of this manager and he's ready to give up on this this individual said they're going to go work for another company, a competitor. Yeah. And he just got mad. He says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And he puts his hand over the phone to tell me, man, I'm going to take this guy up and down because he just turned, he's not loyal to me anymore, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Right. Instead of trying to figure out why.
Yep.
Why, what's going on? How can I keep you? What can I do? Right.
Well, if you remember in our business that we were in together, non-competes were the one thing that people put in force to make sure that great salespeople didn't leave for competitors. And there were certain states, and I think West Virginia was one of those states, where the courts ruled that those non-competes were null and void because you couldn't keep a person from making a living. Obviously you couldn't do that. So there were companies that tried and failed. But what strikes me in this conversation, Ray, is you and I were talking on my podcast, the Intentional Encourager podcast, and you told me about the time that you left the executive chef world and you went to the company that we were both with.
Right.
And you had to, you took over a department. Yeah, I think you took over the routing department. Mm-hmm. And I remember you telling me, you were like, it was a bigger situation than I thought. It was a bigger mess than what I thought it was. And I've always been struck by that because, and I still pull that piece out of our conversation because it reminds me that in the business we were in, we were for all intents and purposes a transportation company. We just moved boxes
Yep.
from one place to another, but we essentially were a transportation company.
Correct.
And it struck me that you were able to go in there, see what needed to be fixed, but here's what I really pulled out of that. It started with the people that were there,
Mm-hmm.
that you took a special interest in every one of them,
Yeah.
and empowering them and saying, what do you see that needs to happen here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I took from our conversation, that really just came to the forefront of, we don't ask people who are on the front lines how the battle's being fought.
Right. Right. And I was not as good at that when I was a chef. I'll admit that. Then I learned earlier. And
You and I both know this secret. Most chefs aren't.
Yeah. Right. and I sat there it kind of a light bulb came on. I sat there after one very successful Saturday night. We had 400 or 500 covers in the dining room. We had a party in the back, another 250, 300, and everything went well. And I said, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I need these people.
Yeah. And here's the thing too. You make an excellent point, as always. Executive chefs love putting their names on things, right? Because, you know, look at what's happening today. I mean, all the restaurants that Guy Fieri has put his name on,
Mm-hmm.
and Wolfgang Puck, and guys that, you know, Bobby Flay.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was recruiting for a top 5 culinary school, these kids would tell me, I want to be on TV like Bobby Flay. I want to be at Emeril Lagasse. I want to be these people like that. And I'm thinking to myself, if you only knew how many Saturday nights,
right,
how many 100-hour weeks
mm-hmm.
these chefs knocked out to get to where they are to become celebrity chefs.
Absolutely.
But that's the one thing that I knew about working around chefs, was chefs were always quick to want to put their name on something.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
And they would take personal ownership. And so you mentioned, you know, having a party in the back and 400 or 500 covers in front. Here's the thing. You probably felt like you could have personally put your name on every dish, even though you didn't touch the food.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't touch every dish. What I know about great chefs is that they look at every plate that goes out.
Yep.
Because in a sense, it's them signing their own artwork.
Yep.
To a degree. And I've always been struck by this. I've always been struck by why leaders at times fail to put their signature on the artwork of their people.
Yep.
And because here's the thing, and Rain, I had somebody say to me, I had a guy that I respect, and I'll say his name here because I have a great deal of respect for him. My sales supervisor when I was a district manager was a guy named Mike Drasnovich.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a district manager, it was the first time I'd ever managed people. Mm-hmm. But I was smart enough to realize one thing very early. I needed Mike.
Yeah.
I needed Mike. Mm-hmm. And so one of the first things that I did when I got the DSM job is I went to Mike and I said, I need you. I need you. I need to empower you. And I said, I need you to understand how valuable you are to me. You and I are going to make, I'm the DSM, but you and I are going to make decisions together.
Right.
And we did.
Yeah.
And I talked to Mike probably 2 or 3 years ago. I called and checked on him. He's having some health issues. And he told me, he said, you know, the one thing I will always remember about you is how you cared about your people.
Yeah. That's a piece, Brian. That's a
great
piece to feel good, right?
Well, listen, I let a lot of guys and gals walk on me.
Yep.
There were a lot of things I wasn't good at. I could look at that time critically and I could say, boy, I failed a lot.
Yep.
But that's the one thing, Rain, that I am so proud of, is that I think if you survey those people to this day and you say, what kind of manager was Brian? They would say, well, yeah, Brian cared about me.
Yeah.
Brian always cared about me.
Yep. And it says a lot about you as a person. It's the kind of things that when we get to our 80th birthday party, we want people to say that about us.
Yeah.
100%. I
100%.
don't need them to tell me, yeah, you made 3 profit plans in a row, or, you know, you had this award or whatever. That's what I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that create encouragement, Brian, right? Those are the things that for some reason leaders have a hard time being that open to talk, that vulnerable, to share that kind of information, encouragement. And you're right. And so people leave. So how do we safeguard against that?
Well, again, I think you have to be proactive with your encouragement.
Okay.
Again, I said this to a guy I go to church with. He had just gotten promoted into a management position. We were talking about that. I said, let me give you a piece of advice, Danny. I said, okay. I said, every week, if you manage 5 people, every week, 1 person a day, you're letting them know what they've done. Whether it was last week or in the current week, you let them know something that they've done that's been valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it goes something like this. If you work for me, Rain, can I have 5 minutes of your time?
Mm-hmm.
Rain, hey, I just wanted to come by and say how valuable you are to this organization. And here's why. You're always bringing ideas to the table that help us get better. And that's valuable to me because it shows me that you're constantly thinking about our team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what we'd do without you, and I want you to know how valuable you are to us. See, it goes deeper than appreciation, Rain. There's a vast difference between value and appreciation.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm going to continue doing exactly what you just
exactly. And Rain, so yeah, and so the vast difference between value and appreciation is pretty simple. You know, we talk about, you know, oh, I appreciate you. Well, that's great. But again, I think you'd rather know what's valuable.
Yeah.
See, I appreciate this Bengals pullover that I have on. But you know what's valuable to me is my cell phone. You know what's valuable to me is my wallet. You know what's valuable to me is my watch, my wedding ring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are valuable to me. That's why when I stay overnight somewhere, I know where those things are immediately.
Right.
My clothes are in a suitcase and it's across the room somewhere and something like that. If God forbid if my house was on fire,
mm-hmm.
I'd grab my wallet, my Bible, my wedding ring,
mm-hmm.
my cell phone. And I had a friend of mine that lost everything about a year and a half ago, lost everything in a fire, including his wallet and cell phone. And he's like, we just barely had time to get out of the house.
Mm.
But again, Rain, those are things that are valuables. Why do we lock valuables in a safe? Is because we don't want something to happen to them. Yeah. But yet we don't feel that same way about people in our organization. No. We don't lock them away from our competitors for safekeeping.
No.
I've never figured that out.
No. To that point, I remember we had an individual who's a phenomenal salesperson. Absolutely phenomenal. And he wanted to be a manager. And they kept saying, nope, you're too valuable to us on the street. We need you on the street. You're too valuable to us on the street. Until a competitor said, oh, you'd be very valuable to us as a sales manager. And he left.
Yeah.
Right. And they were like flabbergasted. How'd we lose him?
Yeah.
He's making great money. That's not what he wanted.
Yeah.
He wanted to be a manager.
Well, there are times.
How hard was that?
It wasn't hard at all. And you and I have a friend, Terry. The thing that I will say about Terry is the knowledge that he imparted to salespeople was so valuable because, again, you store up a lot of things across your life.
Yep.
And you get to the point to where you either by position or just by becoming a mentor or by age, you get to that point where you start imparting things to people.
Yep.
And we should always be in a place, Rain. We should always be in a place of impartation.
Oh, yeah.
We should always be. See, I have a cousin. that I think he's in his late 60s, early 70s. His mother was my dad's older sister.
Okay.
So he was a little bit older than my dad even.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to him one time. He had been having some health issues, and he's a minister. And I said to him, I said, Rick, this now for you, you may not be able to do the things that you want to do physically.
Sure.
But now this is a season of impartation where now you can impart wisdom to people.
Right.
That doesn't take a lot of physical prowess to be able to sit some young ministers down and say, guys, here's some things that I've learned over the years that I want to share with you that will help you. And so to me, Rain, I think we've got to empower people to do some impartation, especially if they're senior in your company. Yeah. And you've got some younger people in your company. Those people can be extremely valuable in pouring into those younger people. And by proxy, it keeps not only the senior people around a little bit longer, and they don't want to go anywhere else, but it keeps the younger people around too.
Yeah. Great piece. Often, I think we're too quick. It's kind of like that disposable, whole perspective that people have. And once somebody gets to a certain age, stats show that they're not going to be producing and so
100%
time to go out, put them out to pasture. And wow, you're right. Like that minister, there's so much inside that's so valuable. Let's mine that gold. Right.
Yeah. And again, that's what I don't understand. The last 10 years or so, I've been intentional about trying to do that, trying to impart things to people. And because I felt like the last 10 years has been an impact zone for me, 40 to 50.
Yep.
And I was thinking about this today. I was thinking, what's the next 10 years going to look like?
Right.
And I think for myself, it's now going to be intentional impact.
I love it.
It's saying more with less.
Yeah. I love that, buddy.
And now that I think about it, it's probably going to be impartation. It's probably going to be that impartation zone.
That's a great way to move forward, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to hide the gray in my hair and in my beard. So,
yeah,
I don't have that nice Scandinavian blonde like you've got. So,
yeah, great. Well, that does hide the gray very well.
You are blessed, my friend. Yeah, you are blessed.
I know I'm blessed because I have people like you that come onto this show and help me out.
Well, any time that I can spend time with you and your impact. Listen, you've been telling folks for many, many years, you've been showing value to other people. And that's what's so important right now. You and I were talking about this. And again, we led our conversation off by the conversation that we had.
Yep.
And I just believe that the reason that talent is matriculating out of companies in large part is companies are not doing enough to build a culture of encouragement.
Yeah.
And again, it's, what alarms me is that money seems to be the greatest motivating factor for a lot of people in making moves. I've been guilty of that. But when you're not encouraged, the money doesn't matter.
No.
The money doesn't. If you wake up without a sense of purpose, what good's the money going to do? Is the money going to, if you made $100,000 more or $1 million more and you don't have purpose, is that $1 million going to create purpose in you?
Nope. It's not going to bring those things you value.
Right. So again, and that's why I keep talking about on my social media platforms, the power of intentional encouragement. Right. And I've told people it will impact everything you do. If you run a sales org and you encourage your salespeople instead of bringing them in and saying, now, how much, you missed your plan by 5%, right. or you had a great month.
Yep.
or a great quarter or a great year, instead of bringing those people in and us doing a film breakdown, what about bringing those people in and say, boy, I really like what you did here.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good.
Yep.
You know, kind of like a quarterback, kind of like Zach Taylor bringing Joe Burrow into the film room. He's not picking him apart and saying, Mike, Joe, that was a terrible throw. What in God's name were you thinking there?
You're right.
They're looking at the good plays and going, yeah, Joe, that wasn't good, but boy, that was really good. Tell me what you saw there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if I've got somebody encouraging me, then I'm going to look introspectively at myself and go, okay, what can I do better? How can I be better? That's what great people do, great athletes, great people. They're always introspective. They never discourage themselves by a bad performance because we all have them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They keep themselves encouraged and they say, here's what I could have done better.
Yeah.
Here's what I should have done better. If I get in that situation again, here's what I'm going to do.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm totally into that. And one of the things you brought up for me in this conversation is the people in my life that did that, and the fact that to this day, and I haven't seen them in 5-10 years, I'd run through walls for them.
Yeah.
You know, because they encouraged me to do that. They encouraged me,
Yeah.
and those encouragements helped me see paths that I didn't necessarily see. I might have accidentally tripped upon this process or method or something, and when they said, no, that's good, that's really good, keep going in that direction. Yeah. Right.
You shared something with me on my podcast. Mm-hmm. You shared the time that you had an accident with your chainsaw.
Yep.
And you split your forehead open.
Yep.
And you told me, you said, that changed me. That singular incident changed the way I thought about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, you were really just killing yourself, just working all these hours and things like that. And if I remember correctly, you were tired, but it had to be done. And you're sitting there and you split your forehead open when something kicked back on you, and you were like, that changed me. We should not have to have a chainsaw to the forehead, right, so to speak.
Right.
To get us. And this is what happens a lot of times. When talent leaves a company, it's like that moment you described to me on my podcast, and that leader's sitting there going, oh my gosh.
Right.
It's jarring, it's rocking to the company. Right. But we can avoid those things, I believe, if we will take enough time to build a culture of encouragement, intentional encouragement, and keeping those people encouraged and valued,
right,
so that they're not looking for that exit, and that leader's not going, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't see that coming, and have to have those moments of trauma in
right,
the company,
right,
to get them to understand how important that is.
Yeah. And it takes a real vulnerability in the leader to stop and say, okay, where are we at today? Where was I expecting to be? And what have I not done? And what have I been doing well?
Yeah.
And looking back and saying, okay, right, and doing it and getting our arms around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, Rain, I look at these things and I say to myself, it's so obvious to me, and it's so evident to me. Why don't we get that culture of understanding? Here's what I figured out.
Okay.
Here's what I figured out. We are in a society that undervalues deference and overvalues indulgence.
Okay, help me with that.
And here's how I'm going to unpack that.
Mm-hmm.
To be an intentional encourager means that I'm deferring more to other people
Gotcha.
than I'm giving. So I'm giving more than I'm taking in.
Yeah.
Okay. And we live in a society of, well, let me post about where I've been, what I've done, what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me, or I'll say, or I hear somebody say, well, I was able to encourage somebody today.
Right.
Well, you just took the encouragement and made it about yourself
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
not about that other person.
Yeah. Outward focus.
Outward focus. Exactly. And so again, we've traded deference for indulgence. We used to be a deferential society.
Mm-hmm.
When you and I were growing up, what did our dads teach us as little boys? You open the door for a lady.
Mm-hmm.
You let a lady go in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Open that door for them. We used to be a deferential society in conversations. We didn't used to be argumentative.
No.
We used to be deferential.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's about, what platform can I build?
Right.
What can I do? How can I serve myself
Yeah.
first? And I believe that's where we have missed it completely. And that's why I believe intentional encouragement can change so many things in business and in life and in every part of ourselves, because it takes the indulgence and it puts deference there first. It's not about me, Rain. It's about you. It's about encouraging you. It's about lifting you.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I cannot encourage you until I get encouraged myself, because I can't pour into you from an empty bucket.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
When you would make stock for your restaurants, classically trained chefs never bought stock.
Mm-hmm.
They never bought stock.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they did? They roasted the bones.
Mm-hmm.
They made the mirepoix. They did all that stuff themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It would be an insult to that chef to ever buy stock.
Mm-hmm.
When you were coming up, and when guys like Mike were coming up, who I mentioned earlier, Mike, that was an insult to chefs, because they knew the process was about getting it right.
Yeah.
And doing it right. So they would labor and they would sacrifice, and it wouldn't be about them and their time. It was about the product.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It was about how good can I make this stock?
Yeah. And the people we're going to feed.
Yep. And the people we're going to feed.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself. And so again, we've got to be, when we can get back to being deferential, that's when we're going to see a lot of things change, I believe.
Yep. Brian, my head's a popping as you're putting that tea down. My head's a popping, buddy. And I really appreciate your input on this. I really appreciate your input. And man, as always, it's been enjoyable just talking.
Well, again, time. Rain, here's the thing. Let me leave your audience with this.
Okay.
Okay. I was telling my 21-year-old, we're talking about encouragement one day. And I said, let me ask you a question, Bryce. It's okay. I said, you've lived in this house since you were 5 years old, the house we live in. I said, has the refrigerator ever changed positions on you? He said, no. I said, when you're hungry, do you know where to go? Yeah. I said, when you're thirsty, has the water fountain, has the sink in the kitchen ever changed positions on you? No, Dad. I said, listen, when you need encouragement, you've got to know exactly where to go get it.
Right.
And what you're looking for.
Right.
In that moment. And so I would tell you this. Do you want to know the secret to intentional encouragement? Is knowing those sources that when you're thirsty, Rain, do you go get a cheeseburger?
No.
You go get water, you go get some juice, or you go get some coffee, or you go get something that hydrates you. And when you're hungry, most people go, when you're hungry, you don't go, You know what would be really good right now is a big bottle of Gatorade. But
Right.
yeah, it's going to satisfy my hunger. You're going to be like, no, let me get something
Mhm.
nourishing. And so you got to remember where the right sources are in those times that you need encouragement. It's like what your battery does. Forgive me for going over just a minute, but
Mhm.
let me share this with you. I spent time in the auto electrical industry.
Mhm.
Your battery does not charge your car.
Mm.
Your alternator does not charge your battery. People think it's, oh, my alternator charges my. No, your alternator does not charge your battery. Your alternator supplies the right amount of current to keep your battery charged.
Like it.
Okay. So your alternator senses what your battery needs and then sends that charge because your battery is constantly trying to power the lights and trying to power all the stuff inside your
Mhm.
car. And that alternator senses what your battery needs and then sends the right amount of current to top that off. So when you need encouragement, when you sense those times that you need encouragement, or you sense those times in your team that they need encouragement, you need to know what the right encouragement is at the right time and deliver it.
Yeah. Well, Brian, once again, you've been my alternator when I want encouragement, brother.
Thank you.
You
What
got
an
it.
honor, Rain Man. I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, Brian. I appreciate you and our friendship. Hey,
Absolutely. Value it greatly.
you take care. This has been another leadership lesson from Rain's World. If this kind of learning whets your appetite, leaving you wanting for another helping of this kind of content, visit me at getlifeandbalance.com.